Hi, I'm Dr. Kevin Mailo, and you're listening to the Physician Empowerment Podcast. At Physician Empowerment, we're focused on transforming the lives of Canadian physicians through education and finance, practice transformation, wellness, and leadership. After you've listened to today's episode, I encourage you to visit us at phys.empowerment.ca, that's PHYS, empowerment.ca, to learn more about the many resources we have to help you make that change in your own life, practice, and personal finances. Now on to today's episode. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me on this episode. And today we're going to be interviewing Dr. Susannah Ward, who has previously been on the show. She is from New South Wales, Australia, and is a physician of physical rehabilitation medicine, but that really doesn't describe everything that you do, Susannah. So why don't you go ahead and share some of the different roles that you carry in your work, because it's much broader than rehabilitation medicine.
Well, thank you for having me back. I'm very excited to chat to you. I really enjoyed last time, and I think that we are bang on with our alignment and passion. So I'm very excited for this chat. So yeah, I'm a rehab.
Right down to the same pink stethoscopes.
I know, we just established that we have the exact same pink stethoscopes. So yeah, Physician of Rehab is the doctor title, but also a founder of a company called Ataraxia Collective that runs doctor wellbeing and CPD retreats. So I'm a yogi and mindfulness meditation teacher. I've also written a book on wellbeing called Mastering Real Wellness, and I'm the current chair of the Australasian College of Physicians Member Health and Wellbeing Committee, which is fantastic. And one of the cool things we do, and actually you guys can listen, it's open to anyone interested in wellbeing and resonates with being an advocate of wellbeing in medicine. We run these webinars across Australia and New Zealand discussing doctor health and wellbeing, not just for themselves as individuals, but the health and wellbeing of our medical culture and our workplaces. So all of those things are kind of taking my time at the moment. But yeah, I'm also just a big old dag that loves having, conversations that are interesting with people and connecting. Connecting is what I'm all about. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we had some, great online interview earlier, and then our sort of non-recorded conversations were absolutely great. And so I wanted to continue on with one of those, which is discussing blind spots. And one thing that's been speaking to me recently in last few years of my life is working on being a unified whole. That while we may carry different roles in our personal and professional lives, trying to be most connected with ourself and authentic in our presentation goes a long way, I think, not only towards doing better in those roles, but also simply being happier and thriving. And part of that is being able to look at our blind spots. So why don't you take us down that topic a little bit more? Because I know you have some expertise in this.
Yes, I'm so into this chat, so I'm really excited. But basically, because I relate to this personally in my own journey of medicine, there is this masking that we all do in our lives, but particularly doctors, I think that we feel we have to wear these masks to be professional. But professionalism does not necessarily mean that you can't be yourself. And I think being connected to yourself in medicine, key to that is knowing your values and priorities. So, for example, knowing that what's most important to your practice, the reason why you're doing medicine is literally you want to show up and you want to leave an imprint of lightness and love, compassion, warmth, forgiveness, non-judgmental care, whatever it is, that's values. And your priorities, well, that's different for everyone. I know a lot of doctors love teaching and supervision and stuff like that. I just like having a yarn with my patients. If I'm really blessed to get to see all these older patients, and that couple that's been together for like 63 years. I'll be like,
I love that. I love that.
Drop the med shot, forget about the bowel care. I'm like, tell me about this. How did you guys make it work? My husband drives me nuts. And then all of a sudden, like, it's just this privilege to meet these people, and that's what lights me up in medicine. So being very connected to your values and keeping that top of mind, and as best you can, no matter how busy and stressful your day is, trying to embody those things and carving out about 20% of your day to your priorities has been, through the evidence, through the peer-reviewed journals, shown to reduce the risk significantly of burnout. And then the other thing is making sure that you're safe, because it's very hard to be yourself and open-hearted when you're in danger. And that's something that we have in part control of, and unfortunately in some contexts, not so much. So if you're under the supervision or, I guess, control of a leader, a senior, a head of department, whatnot, that you intuitively just feel doesn't have your back, it's going to be hard for you to show up your authentic self, because you know that it's not safe to do that. And I think you shouldn't gaslight yourself there, actually. I think you should have your back and just go, actually, my spiny senses are telling me it's not safe to bring this today, and don't. And just keep that for you and be careful and be compassionate, because it just means that right now in your practice at this stage in your life, you aren't able to express yourself, and that's really tough. And then that will impact your self-care, because you're not feeling open, you're not able to connect fully and freely at work, which will impact your well-being. So I think having a bit of awareness around safety is really important. And then blind spots as well. So blind spots are these hidden limitations of self-awareness that maybe others see in you or that comes out in your practice. We all have them. They are not character flaws. And yet we often deny them or hide them in some sort of shame, like as if it's a weakness or it makes us a bad doctor. But actually, a lot of these blind spots are why we got into medicine and how we got into medicine. So there can be strengths. So for example, type A traits and perfectionism, addiction to completion, and over-reliance on external gratification to feel good. It's easy to go, oh, I shouldn't have this, or it's bad, or no one else has this sort of thing. But actually, these are really quite common traits of doctors. And that's why we do medicine and how we get in there. But it can impact the sustainability of our practice. So if we're not keeping them in check, they can then counterintuitively become a weakness and contribute to burnout. And if they overcome us, if they're determining our choices at work or even in our downtime at the expense of our values and priorities, then that also can affect our well-being, because all of a sudden it's about this out of control blind spot as opposed to showing up your whole self at work. So there are common blind spots of high achievers and
Can we
executives.
go through some of these? I find this fascinating.
Yeah.
I would love to hear some of these, right? Because I think we can all relate personally, but then also amongst our colleagues. And I think that's important because it allows us to be more compassionate with how we deal with ourselves, but also our colleagues.
Yes. So I think it's really interesting to think about just generally, like not doctors yet, but think about CEOs and executives and just people in high power positions, right? In the literature suggests that the common blind spots of these types of people is like an overconfidence bias. So overestimating your ability and knowledge, which you could see would be helpful to get into those positions, but potentially a downside. Control fallacy, so believing that you have to control everything. Martyrdom syndrome, so sacrificing your needs at the belief it's necessary for the company or whatever it is that you're doing. Optimism bias, so just assuming that things are going to work out without really managing the risk. My mind goes to that. Have you seen that amazing documentary on Netflix called Fire? About that guy that creates the music festival?
I loved it. I know.
And he doesn't plan it through, but he's got blind spot for the leader. So good. I'm obsessed with it.
Do you know
there's a second
tried to
Fire?
relaunch it this year after he got out of prison, but yeah, it's this like, I don't know what drove somebody to think that was all just going to work out. If you build about half of it, they will come.
It's such an intoxicating dive deep into like how human brains can work. If your listeners have not seen it, you have to see Fire. Anyway, okay, moving back. And also you can probably thinking of certain like political leaders in the world today and things like that. So let's jump to some common blind spots of doctors. So things like we talked about perfectionism. So, and it's really, I hear a lot of people say, I'm not a perfectionist because they're thinking my bedroom's messy or something. But then when you go, what's going on at work, all of a sudden they'll identify that the stress of their life is their clinic letters, and they just are constantly working on these letters. And they may not see that actually there's a bit of perfectionism there, that they're comparing their letters to others, they're putting in way too much time, they're expecting them to be something, and it's
They're
affecting
worrying
their
about the letter before they write the letter. They're worrying as they write the letter. They're worrying after they write the letter. And
yeah,
it
or
becomes a source of
worse.
suffering.
The
Yeah.
perfectionism is so bad that they're not doing the letters.
Yeah, well, because you avoid the unpleasant experience. And so that's where you can see why, well, yes, it's good to be meticulous in your letters, but this is a point where it's gone further than that.
Yeah. And there is an absolute difference between having a high standard and quality of excellence versus being an unrealistically perfectionistic. And at the end of the day, if you're doing letters at work rather than going home to have dinner with your family, which is in the end going to create more well-being and productivity for you, then there's an issue there. So, but you've got to have that self-awareness to turn, the reflection onto yourself to see it. It is literally a blind spot. Get it?
Absolutely.
Okay, so
Absolutely.
there's more. So rescue
Oh,
or
yeah,
identity.
let's go through some of these because they are just great.
Yeah. And don't feel like if you're listening and go, I do that, it's not, please, just self compassion. Remember, you cannot see the truth without that loving kindness. So in yoga, we talk about the ahimsa with the satya. And so it's that compassion, that understanding that this is a shared human thing. It's not something to be ashamed of. And the more you shine the light on it, the less shame there is. We all know Brené Brown's amazing work. So rescue identity, the need to save everyone over like at the expense of your boundaries, which can really contribute to compassion fatigue. Workaholism, so equating work productivity with worth and ignoring rest and recovery. Emotional numbing, so we are trained to be able to work in highly emotional contexts, and often to the expense of then being connected to emotions, which are a required part of rational decision making, and also connection with other people. Feedback aversion, so avoiding feedback and being defensive around suggestions in peer review. Siloed thinking, so believing one's perspective is complete, and limiting collaboration and help seeking. So what else is there? There's what I talked about, external gratification. So a lot of doctors, it feels really good to get that pass mark, but then what? All of a sudden you're looking for the next thing to add to your.
Yeah, you're constantly seeking, yeah, like external validation through your peers or patients. And that can be pretty sparse at times. If everybody's tired, not necessarily going to notice your great work. So it's hard to keep going on some of those things.
A massive one in medicine is people pleasing. I see it time and time again. And it can really impact people. And then you justify the people pleasing and you're sort of like going around in circles. So doctors that find it hard to say no to things, even though, they know it's going to be something that's hard for them or they don't have time for, or they're ending up doing the thing that their boss wants to do at work rather than the thing that they really want to do at work. And then that addiction completion, by the time you're a doctor, you've literally spent 20 years of your life or thereabouts training yourself to be constantly completing tasks, that a lot of people find themselves distressed when they've got downtime. They get rushes of guilt or as though they should be achieving something and that they don't deserve just stillness, or even physiologically, their emotion system, their energetics is so dysregulated that sitting still is literally unpleasant in their body because they haven't done it in 10 years. And then all of a sudden, these people can then go, oh, there's something wrong with me. And that's just an unhelpful judgment. But actually, it makes perfect sense because we are these individuals that come into medicine with traits and personalities, with moods, but also conditioning and influence from our external world. We're inextricably linked with the people around us, our culture, social norms, and our lifestyle. And at the end of the day, we're just a human organism and we can't outlive our natural wiring and physiology. You know what I mean? So it's about just getting to know that without judgment. And the more we can see what's really happening, the more likely we are to then be able to manage it optimally in ways that work for us.
And, yeah, I think you hit on something so important is recognizing our humanness and really embracing ourselves in our totality, right? Even the things that might be considered blind spots. And I struggle to call things flaws because, you know, it's it's who we are. It's part of our makeup, right? And like you said, shining the light on it can be difficult at first, but then a very powerful, means to change. And not just, this is not about in performance. I always struggle with that when I talk about the well-being of physicians. The conversation has to move away from performance and productivity to truly, right? To truly thriving, to truly being happy and healthy and not sicker than our patients, because I looked at some of the Canadian data, and we are not necessarily healthier than our patients based on some of the research data. So we need to get to a better place collectively.
So let's like have this movement away from performance and productivity, to listen to this, wait for it, Kevin, to presence and potential.
I love it. Presence and potential. But it's so true. It's so true. And realizing that we matter in this, right? We work in these large systems, but as an individual, we have to matter. Firstly, to ourselves, right? Firstly, to ourselves before we even walk through the doors of our workplaces. So, yeah, I've done some of this self work over the years and loved it. At first, it was really, really hard to shine the light in some of those dark corners of perfectionism, of people pleasing, task completion, all of those things. But I don't want to personalize, what we're talking about, but tell me, what are some first steps, right? Because I think this is going to be one of those, things that speaks to all of us. We all carry these quirks. This is what the profession selects for. This is why we all cluster in the profession. So, Susannah, what would you say, okay, for a physician that is, starting to say, I want to be happier. I want to focus on my values. I want to focus on my priorities, and I want to start to address some of these blind spots. What does that process look like? Or what are some tools? Because it's probably going to be a different path for everybody, but what are some of the tools that we can reach for?
Okay, so I think we all have this, right? And sometimes the first step is getting permission to be human. And that's usually not from yourself. And that's why having these conversations, you and I projecting it to our friends, our colleagues, is really important. And some people go to coaches or psychologists or have mentors. Whatever it is, I do think you can have all the skills in the world, but sometimes you do need a buddy. So I think there's no shame if you're struggling and you realize there's a blind spot, you don't know what it is, you don't know where to start. It's just like, things are tough, to get help, right? However, if you don't think you need help, then the next step would be to sort of imagine turning a spotlight on yourself. So in what way are you going to do that? Like, when things aren't right, you'll feel stuck, you'll be in a rut, maybe your unhelpful habits out of control, maybe someone's tapping you on the shoulder going, what is going on with you? Or, it's reflected in your work for whatever reason. You maybe just not performing as well as you used to. So something's not right, something's out of balance, something's got to give, there's an issue. So that's the really nice, like, stop, alarm bell, like, focus on yourself. And then you got to turn the spotlight on yourself. So things like mindfulness practices, journaling is massive. I have finally, at the ripe old age of 43, embraced journaling. I try and do it every morning, every evening, because my mind is that busy and it's so effective. And the way I do it now is without any rules. Sometimes it's a dot point. Sometimes it's like a book that I'm writing. Sometimes it's a story. I don't know. It's whatever I need. I just write, get it out, brain dump. Maybe it's a list of what I want, how I'm going to get it. Maybe it's a goal plan. Just get it out. And putting things on paper is so helpful.
That was actually great. Sorry, I know the journaling, I started to do it again in earnest this year. And yeah, not having a structure is wonderful, because you put all that, we're full of requirements and specifications in our job. journaling without structure is a wonderful space. And sorry, please continue. So it's a very powerful tool.
Because like on a very sort of human neuroscience level, there's a lot of cognitive load worrying
Yeah,
about
it's just
nonsense
got to come
like
out.
spelling and grammar. Like I never really had much time for spelling and grammar since I was little. It's like, who cares? But also like some sort of plan to your journal then takes away from just connecting to what it is you're trying to express, and sometimes it's not even a word, so that makes journaling hard, like to articulate it into a human sentence. That's very abstract. Actually, our inner experiences, we try and create language to express them, but then they're not that, are they? There's something before that, and my mind and my feelings are way faster than I can write. And I think that's part of a barrier for me with journaling. And I've just embraced that. So now I'm just like, anyway, but that's just one way of reflecting. Conversations with people you can trust that are safe people, practices like yoga, mindful gardening, baking, whatever it is that people do. I mean, Kevin, do you have a practice in your lifestyle that allows some reflection?
Yeah, I actually really came to love yard work and like planting trees.
Oh,
I also really, really love to clean. So
wow.
yeah, so I kind of it's kind of those escapist, like those, it's like that task, because I think I'm probably on that busier spectrum, but it's like the task that you can kind of really go into and have nothing else to do but the task. And it's low pressure, right? So those are some things that I enjoy.
And it's not harming yourself or others. And sure, it's busy, you're not sitting down meditating or doing something like that, but that's okay. Like work with who you are.
Yeah. The other one that I found very helpful in navigating, like falling back in love with emergency medicine, because I went through a period where I struggle with it. And this was some of the work I had done with my own psychologist. I try to be very open. Like my work that I did with my psychologist was absolutely transformative, and not just geared to fixing quote unquote problems, but actually helping me be my best self. But one useful exercise was going through my day and trying to identify, like on a very visceral level, like that, like mind body connection. What physical sensations do you feel as you go through your day? What do you feel, in your gut, in your shoulders, in the back of your neck, as you drive to work? How do you feel as you drive home? What aspects of your day-to-day job, bring
Mm,
you like that inner peace, or that happiness, or that elation or excitement, or whatever, kind of positive body sensation or emotion tied to it that might emerge? And then what do you feel that makes you uncomfortable, right? Like, so the note writing gets me, right? The paperwork and staring at screens gets me, the inbox, right? And so just having that, kind of bringing some of those subconscious elements to the fore of our awareness, I thought was a very powerful exercise. And you can just go through it during the day, even right down to certain patient presentations, where you may say, okay, well, this is one that I kind of struggle on. And then, well, what do I struggle about? And so you can break up your workday into the little bits that tell you about yourself,
yeah.
right? Like that you can find out aspects of your work or your daily life based on your physical sensations, your mind body connection, that tell you about yourself. And then from there, you can work on those things, right? Or what you can't change, you acknowledge, and practicing that acceptance, right? Because nothing is going to be perfect in our lives,
Yeah.
right?
If you're not sure what it is about your day that's distressing you, what the blind spot is, at what needs to shift, then certainly listening to your body as a useful messenger, and noticing the cues. So it might be on the ward round or something like that. You're noticing the neck tension. You'll be like, oh, just even shining light on that. Like, wow, my neck's really tense, drop the shoulders, and just note that. And you start to see these patterns. One practice in yoga that we do is a body scan or a yoga nidra. And I used to do that a lot. I think years of it really helped me rewire my brain to be naturally more noticing of my somatic cues distally rather than just mental cues. And so you can just Google body scan, yoga nidra, and there's heaps of free stuff on YouTube. videos. Yoga practice, obviously, but any body work is really good. So getting even massages, there's a justification to get a massage once a month because it literally brings yourself into your body and you will be distracted by thoughts and thinking, but just turn your attention back to the massage. But the other thing that you mentioned was, oh, now I've forgotten, but I think some of the other skills with seeing your blind spots require compassion, because we talked about how shining the light on these. So you might notice, oh, wow, I really want to finish this report and send it to this person. I just want to get it done because I just love getting things done. And then my inbox is clean. And sometimes that's appropriate and really going to benefit your well-being. But sometimes also you should leave and be
Mhm.
strict and get to the gym class, or,
Yep.
get home and have the walk with your son that you said you're going to do, or whatever it is. So being able to have some self-compassion there where you're going, oh, this is just that thing I do where I want to complete things at the expense of, people that mean something to you, that can feel really harsh. So using self-compassion skills, what would I tell a friend? What's another way of seeing this? Like, everyone has this. This is okay. And then mindfulness is massive. Mindfulness, people don't want to hear about mindfulness anymore. They're sick of it. All it means is being able to, in your everyday life, tap into the present moment. So you're not in the past, the future, you're not thinking too much, you're not fused with a feeling, emotion, an urge, or a chronic pain, or you're actually just openly aware, you're curious, and you're able to slow things down. So when you're trying to change a blind spot that you notice, it's almost like an urge. So you just need to slow things down. So notice that it's there, be open and curious to it without judgment, slow things down, say, is this a blind spot of mine right now? What's the blind spot that could be here? I'm noticing that I'm trying to do something at the expense of my values and priorities. I'm feeling a little bit of discomfort within, which is like cognitive dissonance, and I'm not sure what to do. And then you can start some questions like, what's another way of doing things? Or even just do the complete opposite of that action and face the challenge head on. And then set yourself up to win. So once you've identified your blind spots, you're like, okay, these are my top ones at the moment, because they constantly change and they come and go. Then think, what's going to help in my environment to set me up to win? And plan it. Think, I'm about to do that clinic. I know I'm going to want to run an hour late, but I'm not going to do that this time. You could set an alarm. You could get your partner to ring you. You could write a notepad on your computer, which is like leave at 5. I don't know, something you want to do, and equip yourself with resources, with support, and learn some skills. There's just endless skills in this stuff now. So if you're invested and you get involved, it's sort of like, it's not a set and forget thing. It's like a commitment forever, this self-reflection and personal growth piece, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think you hit on a couple of really important points, Suzanne. Is first that it's like the compassion is not only the self-compassion is not only recognizing the blind spots, but learning that they're a part of you, right? So the goal here is not the elimination of them, but actually the embracing and managing of them, realizing that aspects of those are good. They just have to be managed or channeled so that you're sort of in your best place. And that this is the other big one for me that sort of came out as we're talking, is that it is a constant conversation with self, right? We tend to be very task oriented in medicine. So it's like, okay, well, I identified a blind spot. I'm going to have this fixed in 6 months. No. It doesn't work that way. It's a part of us, right? And some of these things go back all the way to early childhood or prior traumas. So they're not about to be undone rapidly. And so it's a constant conversation with self. It's no different than physical fitness. You don't just get to, train for a marathon, run the marathon, and then, do no more fitness for the rest of your life because you checked a box. It's not like that. It's an ongoing process. So lots of kindness there.
I think the blind spot can be a tool, and you can ask yourself, oh, here's that blind spot. Am I going to use that tool right now? Obviously, we use tools when it's going to
Yeah.
work. So the question is, maybe tomorrow it will work, but right now in this instance, is that what's called for? And sometimes I have to say, imagine you're an ED physician and you're short staffed and an arrest comes in when you're meant to go home. What are you meant to do then? Like you'll go, oh, this is my people pleasing blind spot boundary. I'm going to head off. Obviously, in that moment, what's going to work is that you stay back a little bit later and help that team. But that doesn't mean that you can't deal with it. It just means in that moment, you're just going to notice it, accept the situation, but maybe you park it for later and you go, I'm going to talk to the DMS or my manager or whatever and go, what is going on with the rostering at the moment? There was not enough people. I can't keep doing this. This is unsustainable. We need a plan. And so you're noticing that, you want to please and you want to do all these things and the martyrdom syndrome and, the ED can't function without me and all that stuff. But there's a part of that maybe is real and actually you need to put in place some strategies and change there, because otherwise the context and environment is taking advantage of you. And so part of that is boundaries. I think a big skill in boundaries is something that doctors could cultivate.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one skill that I like teaching doctors because it's so simple, called the stop technique. It's incorporated into like dialectic behavioral therapy, DBT, and also mindfulness-based stress reduction. It's an acronym, so STOP, and it's stop what you're doing, take a deep breath in, observe everything going on inside of you. So we've got feelings, physical feelings, emotions, mental fathoms, thoughts,
Body sensations,
urges, and emotions, all of this stuff. But then also we've got the external world and what we can perceive through our external senses, and then proceed in line with your values and priorities. And it's a really good thing. You can set an alarm of a day, or you can just have these cues. So for me, when I was a trainee and I was trying to build my mindfulness because I was training through burnout, I would do my stop when I parked my car at some stage when I was eating lunch or whatever, and then when I got back in my car. And it just made me reconnect to present, get out of default mode, start to bring that more integrated sense of self. So when I say that, we are awareness, and there are realms where we can place our awareness. We have thoughts, we have physical feelings, we have emotions, urges, and then we have each other and our environment, and we're kind of all of these things, right? But the stop technique just makes you build that capacity to see that, because we can all too easily get stuck in our minds, especially because we're trained to be, if you're a doctor, that's what you did through uni and studies, is that you're trained to think, you're trained to mitigate risks, to consider all the scenario, you're trained to think. That's what we're paid for. So having a little balance is good. I really like the stop skill.
There is so much there. And then maybe just to zoom out a little bit as we get close to wrapping up is, relations to colleagues, right? Because, sort of once you've gone down this road of trying to identify these blind spots or aspects to people's personalities, you can start to identify them in your colleagues, right? And there's no shortage, because we cluster with these traits given the strong selection pressures within medicine, right? The ones who ultimately get into a position to apply to medical school and get accepted to medical schools, have these traits, and then they're developed or encouraged by a medical culture that wants to see them brought to the fore. And perfectionism being a good example. But looking at your colleague can be useful because you can start to see where you might be similar, and it's useful that way. But it also creates a lot more space for compassion as we relate to our colleagues, right? Because we might have that one that we kind of get a little annoyed with, be like, okay, you're always trying to chime in and be right, and needing to say your 2 cents, but then realizing that might actually be their quirk, right? And then what does that say? Do I need to be the one to chime in and be right? Or maybe I just don't do it as much, but I'm still doing it. And so it's useful to kind of watch your colleagues, but again, through a compassionate lens, not a judgmental one, because we all carry something.
Yes. Ultimately, I guess the question is, what's the control I have over the situation? What is the role I may be playing here?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Right. And because you can, instead of like in that example, like one-upping, you can actually pause and you can say, actually, I'm about to, reach for my blind spot, and maybe I'm not going to chime in and try to one up and be right on this debate. And in that moment, you're happier, and you've done something to improve the situation that we all work in.
Yeah. And you can check in with your values and priorities as an indicator of, hey, do I stand my ground here, or do I just let this go right now?
Is this a drama day or a no drama day?
Yeah. Is this a non-negotiable, or can I just,
let it go?
Notice the blind spot here, or what the role that I'm playing, and soften here.
And it's the pause. Like you said, it's the pause. That's it. Just before you chime in. And now, of course, like, let me vent about technology. But now there are group chats, there are emails, right? Like we're constantly bombarded with this stimulation from the job.
Yeah. And the willingness to think, oh, maybe I'm playing a role here, because, we're so, this sounds bad, but some doctors might be vulnerable to arrogance and ignorance.
Oh, God forbid.
And entitlement and that power play, but actually we don't know it all, and more often not, probably don't. And the more we're open to what we don't know, the more data we have, the more, diversity we have in our team approach. That's what I love about rehab, is it's all about this holistic picture of a person and that integrated sense of self, but also, it's interdisciplinary, and you're listening. Well, you should be. There should be no hierarchy. You're all important in a rehab team. You're listening to each other. You're all bringing something together, and you get this really integrated sense of a patient. It's very satisfying. I'm much more excited about rehab than, getting my knickers in a knot about a potassium level. I'm like, unless it's really high, and then of course I would do something.
Yeah. Totally.
I'm like, blood in the urine.
Listen,
let's just put that in a discharge summary.
This was absolutely wonderful. I find these topics to be so fascinating. And the things that, like, I don't remember getting any kind of education on this when I went through 20 years ago or whatever it was that I was training, And so I don't know, it's exciting to contribute in some way to, our profession reaching new heights, because I feel like we always progress in terms of knowledge and process, or techniques, but as people, as a profession collectively, I think there's so much growth to be done in the human dimension.
And it's a privilege to do it. We are so lucky. We have this background learning of the body, the mind, neuroscience, and this lived experience of, so many case examples of humans that we touch. It is a privilege, this personal growth thing. Yeah. But I guess just remember that it's okay. You're enough. You're good enough. It's all good. You're human. You're allowed to be flawed. And then just see your blind spots as tools, shine a light, slow down, and focus your practice on potential and presence, not power, productivity, or what was the other one you said?
Oh, there are just so many.
Forget the balance. Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
This was wonderful. Thank you.
All right. We'll keep in touch, please.
Absolutely. So glad to have you on the show again.
Take care.
Thank you so much for listening to the Physician Empowerment Podcast. If you're ready to take those next steps in transforming your practice, finances, or personal well-being, then come and join us at phys-empowerment.ca, PHYS empowerment.ca, to learn more about how we can help. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd really appreciate it if you would share our podcast with a colleague or friend, and head over to Apple Podcasts to give us a 5-star rating and review. If you've got feedback, questions, or suggestions for future episode topics, we'd love to hear from you. If you want to join us and be interviewed and share some of your story, we'd absolutely love that as well. Please send me an email at kmailo@phys-empowerment.ca. Thank you again for listening. Bye.